Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Call the Chris William-Manassas Regional Jail Board to order. Good evening to everyone. Thanks for coming. All right, sir, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kostelecky.
Here.
Mr. Austin.
Here.
Reverend Bailey is not present. Ms. Clymer. Here. Delegate Guzman is not here. Sheriff Hill.
Here.
Captain Laguna. Here. Ms. Lennox is not here. Chief Newsham.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Here. Mr. Torres.
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Hannah, do we have any visitors downstairs that want to address the board? Do we have any written comments submitted to the?
No, sir, we do not.
Board?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, could I get approval of the agenda for our July the 20th meeting?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All right. Who did the second? All right, thank you. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Could I get approval of the minutes of the regular meeting that we had on May 18th of this year?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
I abstain. I wasn't here at that meeting, so.
All right. Superintendent?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. We can go over to page 11. All right. Up in the top section where it's got our operational capacity and management capacity, the modular building is still closed, so those 200 beds we're not using due to COVID and vacancies, more vacancies now than COVID. Down the next section, the average daily inmate population for the last 12 months is 494, and same as the next section for the fiscal year, 494 of 12 months. Transfers to the state system for May was 7, 21 in June. Commitments 575 in May and 557 in June. Releases 567 in May and 581 in June. Processed only by Adult Detention Center staff, 74 in May and 70 in June. Department of Corrections out of compliance. We have 6 inmates who are out of compliance. That's conviction of a felony and serving 3+ years. On page 12, complex average daily population for the month of May is 457 here on the complex, with a high count of 474 on the 3rd day of the month. In June, complex 454, high count 468 on the 6th of June. And on page 14 our history back to FY 1983. You see the 494 system-wide count FY 2022 that we talked about. Our highest count was in FY 2015 of 1,131. All right. Over on the year-end status, FY 22 objectives, July 20, 2022. Implement additional strategies to increase recruitment and hiring of the Adult Detention Center staff to fill vacant positions. Currently, we have 2 scheduled local job fairs coming up, and we're advertising now on 18 websites, including the state of Maryland and Virginia and so forth. We have 83 vacant sworn staff positions, 12 vacant civilian staff, total of 95. Fiscal year turnover rate from July to July is 20%. Prison Rape Elimination Act, nothing to report. However, we are scheduling our 3-year audit in March of 2023. Okay, number 3, ensure career development. 10 jail officers graduated from the Jail Basic Academy on 5/6/2022. Major McMahon attended the Lawful Employment Practice 2022 conference. 380 staff completed crisis intervention training. 7 jail officers were certified as master jail officers. Those are the officers who train new officers to come on board, and it's our first group that we do promotions to sergeant from. Monitoring the main facility. Unfortunately, we found an issue. We have half the building full. We have a major project, looks like, to replace sewer lines in the building. So it's 40-year-old pipes, cast iron. Some other jails have had the same problem over time. So that's going to be a big project. We're still trying to finish up the roof at the front of the building. Also, the main roof is done, but that's where the old magistrate's office used to be. We're working on that too. Evidence-based decision-making policy team initiatives include enhancing data process and expansion of Medicaid-assisted treatment for opioid users. Some good news, we did receive approval from George Mason University for the grant involving Medicaid-assisted treatment. Let's see, since October 19, 2021, 608 boxes of Narcan have been given to inmates upon their release. And COVID, number 6, we have had some not real big outbreaks of COVID, but we have had it at times. Right now, it's 3 staff COVID positive, 0 staff quarantine, 0 inmates positive, 202 inmates vaccinated. So we're looking for that time where we did have a stretch of about 5 weeks of no positives. So hopefully that will happen again. Over on page 16, the next proposal objectives are the same. I was going to remove the main building project, but I'm going to keep that on there since we do have the big replacement of pipe project.
Superintendent, you want to talk any more about your proposed objectives for 2023?
Sure.
Okay.
Certainly want to keep the strategies for recruitment and hiring. We have an initiative we're looking at and working with the county on is GAP. GAP is a program where if you work 1 hour, you get time and a half. But regional jails were not included in the legislation for GAP, so our staff have to work the first 11 hours straight time. So the fellow down here cleaning the pool today, he works an hour, he's going to get time and a half. Where an officer up on a unit with 70 inmates, he has to do 11 hours straight. So county exec is looking at it. He's going to hopefully work with us on that. I think that would be a great retention tool if we can get it. And of course, we have to leave the Prison Rape Elimination Act. That's the federal act. Career development will continue. We talked about the main building. Evidence-based decision-making policy team continues. And we'll still keep track of COVID because it still is around at times.
All right, before the superintendent continues with the report, could I get a motion to approve the proposed objectives for the superintendent? Because these are the objectives we look at when we do the evaluation.
Just a correction, I think, it looks like it's a continuation of 20 of.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
And so these are just the.
1, 2, 3,
starting-
4, 5.
Yeah, that's, okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, I got you. Thanks, Steve.
Ongoing.
Seconded.
A second? All right.
Second.
All right. Any comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Could you call the roll, Sarah, on that, please?
Mr. Kostelecki?
Aye.
Mr. Ashworth, Austin, sorry.
Aye.
Ms. Clymer? Aye. Sheriff Hill?
Aye.
Ms. Laguna? Aye. Ms. Lennox?
Aye.
Chief Newsham?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Torres?
Aye.
And Reverend Bailey and Delegate Guzman are not here, sir.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Superintendent. Can you continue, please?
Sure. You all have the graphs. With you. Okay, first graph is Manassas Complex past 24 months. You go back to July 20. You can see our high count of July 19th on November 20. And then from there, it goes all the way down to June of 454. That's our lowest count since July 2020. With the vacancies we have, that's probably a good thing for us here. Now, the next chart is interesting for sure. You can see the central building in the yellow color. That shows the biggest increases that we house inmates, mainly because number one, the modular is closed, and we increase inmates in these pods due to quarantining that come in. And half the main is closed also, so it affects these two new buildings, the newest buildings. And you can see in the yellow, the central building as the count goes up there because of those reasons. Of course, the modular building in red, that closed in January. So you can see where those numbers went down. This graph is kind of interesting. These are monthly transfers to the Department of Corrections, March 21 through 30th. March 22 to April. You see a big increase in March and April 22 of 30 and 29. Then it goes down again in May and up again in June up to 21. The Department of Corrections has been taking a lot of inmates from all jails. The new sentencing law has come out. Before, when an inmate is charged with a felony and convicted, it's 85% of the time. Now it's 65% of the time. And as long as they have good conduct, they don't have to attend any programs or anything like that. But as long as their conduct is good, apparently the state is taking a lot of that group out, and then they'll be able to release them once they get them down there, I guess. All right, on the next one, complex ADP versus commits. This is pretty interesting when you look over to March 2022, April, May, and June. You have a high number of commits, the highest we've had, but a very low ADP. So, of course, releases the DOC is added to that, plus also release to inmates in general. Complex versus system. The complex is the system, unless we had inmates farmed out to other jurisdictions like we used to have, which we don't. We have 0 farm outs. So you can see where that red line is on top of that green line. The next is commitment. Average by fiscal year. You can see starting in 1993 as it goes up. High counts of commits in 2008 of 1,200, and then as it comes down, our lowest number of commits since 1993 of commits. Less people coming to jail. Next one, system ADP since 1998. That dotted line is a trend line. You can see the high numbers around 2014. That's when EBDM began. And then we went up to 2015, and the numbers started going down to 2022, lowest ADP since 1998 there.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple of questions on his report?
Please, sir.
You said you had 95 vacancies, right?
That's including civilians and
Civilians and jail officers. If you, I saw somewhere that there would be some transfer of those positions to other parts of the county.
Yes, 9 of our sworn positions were transferred at the request of the county exec to Prince William County.
When that happens, the reporting takes down the vacancies from
Yes.
95 by 9?
Yes, no, those are, the 9 were on top of what we have today in the
Oh,
report.
those were on top of the 95?
Yes, sir.
That was one question. The second is, if there is a line where you cut programs based on COVID, do you have some kind of baseline?
We're not there yet. We've continued our programs. They're up and running. If it becomes a security issue and we have to start closing other parts of our facilities, then yes, programs could be affected.
Thank you, thank you.
In the back of the report, there's some recognition of our staff. Of course, we talked about Major McMahon completing the thoughtful employment practice program down in Richmond, Virginia, which is very important. Captain Parker, he assisted serving on an assessment for promotion from Manassas City for the rank of sergeant and lieutenant. I have a letter from the chief on that. And also Captain DePoy, who assisted the family members of need, and the family is very grateful, as well as the inmate too. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Any question for the superintendent? All right, superintendent, you currently have a basic class going on now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have 9 students, Bob? Yeah. 15 students in the academy. They'll be graduating on Friday the 5th. You all are certainly welcome. We're not going to have the box lunch this time. We're going to have what we had before, which is a buffet style, but we'll be careful how we do it. So we'll have a real nice lunch, and it should be very good for us.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent?
Our guest speaker is Chief King.
Who, the chief?
Chief King.
Chief King, yeah.
We'll give it Chief Newsom next.
I got a couple recommendations for you.
That shit
Thank
should be
you.
good. Happy to do it. Over at the rescue squad, it's always good.
Thank you. Any questions for superintendent? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Vienna, how about a budget update? All right, yes.
On the first page here, we are still maintaining about a $2.5 million balance in our commissary account. And that's restricted to inmate benefit, so we have to be careful how we spend those funds. So we continue to try to be creative with how we can use those funds to benefit inmates. The account for fiscal year 22 that just ended on June 30th. The balances are listed below. Again, our spending is lower due to the inmate count. So the federal billings, we had 2 days that we billed for in both May and June. So those budget balances are low in our appropriated funds. And the inmate account for June was $56,854, which is very, very low. I don't think I've seen that for a long time. But that's simply the funds that we have for the inmates. As mentioned before, we did we did transfer 9 of our positions to the county, and those went to development services and some general fund savings, so that's been documented as well. On our revenue budget, we did finally receive SCAP funding. The federal, they just released it at the end of June, and we received $484,340. So that's a large compared to what we've had before. So that will be recorded, and I believe there's another award shortly behind, that's going to be coming up shortly, that will be recorded this year. They have been holding on money, so we've not been able to receive that. So nothing really here to report. Other than the Manassas percentage was 12.6%, so that's up from last year. And then on the next page on the expenditure budget, nothing really to report. We had excess salary and benefit funding due to the vacancies, and we also had operational funding less as well. Still a few more things that have to be reported yet. So we anticipate those balances will go to our fund balance to hopefully help pay for all the piping and other projects that we have coming up. And that's all I have unless anyone has any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Remind me, what does SCAP stand for?
State Criminal Alien Assistance Program.
And remind me what those funds get back to the budget.
We basically send them a list of all of the inmates that come in that were born outside of the country. And they determine through their records, I guess they have, their status. And it is to help offset the cost of us housing those inmates that they determine do not have a legal status in the country.
So it's just reflecting that you're housing individuals that are undocumented in the country.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Carol? Thank you. Ms. Pendat, it's that time of year again where we talk about legislation affecting local jails, regional jails, and jail authorities.
Yes, sir, I brought this whole volume. I thought I'd read word by word
Oh,
what the General Assembly did. Okay.
Probably need to
I will take that as direction to be more brief.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. If I might, you have a list of what we've compiled as most relevant to jails, although some of them, I'm sure when you look at it, will say, really, that doesn't relate to us, but we tried to scour the new changes in order to provide that. There's one I'm going to talk to you specifically about regarding the Freedom of Information Act and the opportunities for more virtual meetings. So I'll leave that to the end. You'll note on the first page that there is more of a state interest in looking at the fees that are associated with inmates, and so there are 2 studies that are going to be going on, and reports will be back this fall or winter. Secondly, there's a waiver of, to allow SNAP benefits applications by inmates before they are released, which would assist them arguably upon being released. There's an interesting provision on the second page at the top that authorizes the governor and members of the General Assembly to enter the interior of any local correctional facility. They have to obviously reach agreement with the superintendents regarding the time and the conditions, but a new additional provision. Under the Freedom of Information Act, there's a requirement now, Sarah and I will make sure it happens, although she's been very good about this anyway, in terms of posting of meeting minutes. There is one that also is part of an effort by many members of the General Assembly, maybe prompted by citizens, to reduce the costs of responding to Freedom of Information Act requests. It's not a source of lots of funds for the ADC. In fact, it usually costs a lot more money than is charged to the person requesting records, but you should just be aware that the movement has been over the last several years to really reduce the ability of governing bodies to charge for the cost of providing records that are requested under FOIA. I noted House Bill 734 regarding disclosure of certain criminal records. There is a specific exemption for the records that the jail has that we frequently exercise, and so this may be of minimal impact with respect to the request to the ADC. And then I want to turn to one provision on page 4, which may not be immediately helpful for the ADC staff. I know that Chief Newsom and Chief Keene may have watched this legislation quite closely regarding facial recognition technology and the use of that, and they're, after having a severe cutback by the General Assembly with the ability to use facial recognition technology by law enforcement, there is an increasing willingness to let such technology be used if it has been scrutinized. You may recall that one of the companies that was providing such technology had a lot of errors in its results. So the General Assembly is looking to the Department of State Police to kind of be the lead on reviewing that technology, and then it will be available under fairly strict limitations for use by local law enforcement and also campus police. If there isn't any question about those, I want to turn back to the General Assembly's opening up of the ability for governing bodies, not all of them, there are certain entities that are excluded or certain types of meetings are excluded, but the jail board would be able to take benefit of the authority in House Bill 444 at the bottom of page 2 to have an additional 2 virtual meetings a year, or up to 25% of the meetings, but the frequency of jail board meetings really doesn't make that 25% really operative, because it's 2 or 25%, whichever is more, when there is no emergency. So a number of governing bodies are looking at using that. Counties, cities, and town governing bodies do not have the options to use that. School boards don't. So if you decide to consider adopting this and amending your bylaws, you will be greeted with some disdain if you go around and go, yay, we're having more virtual meetings, to members of the Board of Supervisors or the City Council or the school board that does not have those options. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. If you're interested in exercising that authority, it takes effect September 1st. I think it would be appropriate to amend the jail board's bylaws to indicate the processes by which such virtual meetings would take place, to make sure that we're consistent with the state enabling legislation. But I think what has happened is, I will call them the powers that be, including the members of the General Assembly, the Supreme Court, courts in general, and others have realized that there is a certain benefit to be had by having remote electronic meetings, even when there is not an emergency or a disaster or some other reason that currently under law is required in order to have a virtual meeting. So I pass that along to you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Pendak? Ms. Pendak, you talked about the fees that may affect our budget.
Yes.
Harold, could you talk a little bit about how much we collect a year, on how that would affect our budget? And you can also mention when we started. And
we did start charging the the dollar a day, which came through the code of Virginia. We implemented that on April 20th, 2004. And they later increased it to up to $3 a day from $1. We have kept it at $1. I think we discussed it, the board discussed it at one time, and we have always remained at $1 a day. So generally, we do a fairly good job at collecting that and making our budget. With our count dropping like it has, we are well below budget on a lot of our inmate fees. The medical fees that we charge, those were put into place before that, but since then the state they directed, I believe it was Department of Corrections, to come up with what they call a model policy, and that gave us the amounts that we were allowed to charge. So we were allowed to charge so much per nurse's visit, per doctor visit, and so we made sure that we were in compliance with all of those, and we didn't really have to lower much. We were fairly low compared to some other facilities. But we do follow that direction. Work release and electronic home monitoring, they pay fees as well to be on those programs, and that helps offset the cost of the equipment that we use to monitor them. So it is a relatively small amount in comparison to our budget, but right now we have inmate revenues are budgeted at, just about 525,000 of our total revenue budget.
Thank you. Any questions to Carol about what she just talked about and how it may affect our budget and our revenues? All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is jail board comments. And I'll start at the end. Ms. Kleiner?
Nothing, sir.
Just one comment based on the minutes from the May meeting that I read. I know that the teacher for GED in Spanish resigned. That's what's my understanding, and that you were trying to hire another teacher. I'm just going to encourage you to do that as soon as possible, because I think that, for my sake, I think that's critical for.
We're still waiting, trying to hire somebody.
Still trying to hire.
That was my comment.
Our agency is celebrating pretrial probation and community supervision week this week. So we've been honoring our staff for the work that they do to improve public safety, and obviously we contribute to the public safety for the region, and also helping to reduce the jail population by diverting lower risk individuals. So I just wanted to make that comment and appreciate the support. We have been getting a lot of pretrial cases, I will tell you, on another note. I don't know if arrests have increased or what, but we are definitely seeing an uptick recently. Anecdotally, I haven't looked at the data yet because it's just been so recent. But yes, we're very busy in my office.
Mr. Kostelewski.
Yes, I just wanted to say publicly thank you to Captain Tapoy for facilitating tours of the jail. We've had two separate groups of interns. We're very blessed to have interns, college interns and legal interns in our office. They're very helpful, and we'd like them to see the courtrooms. We'd like them to see what happens behind closed doors in the Commonwealth's office. We also like them to see the jail, to go behind the closed doors and see what it's like to run a jail, and to see what you see on a daily basis that they have not seen, we hope. So thank you for facilitating that. Two sets have gone through, and we may have a third.
Thank you, sir. Captain?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moore?
2 months ago now, my office hosted an art contest for students in the county, and I wanted to thank Sarah for her daughter's submission. She was honored as one of our top submissions. She's very sweet and did some really great work. I appreciate that you encouraged her to apply. And I wanted to thank the major. She and I both attended the recent employment law update, lawful employment law update, something like that. But I really appreciated some of the feedback that we were able to give each other, and I think we have come up with some ways to improve processes that we wouldn't have had an opportunity to do before. So all that to say, I appreciate the sort of inter-office interaction and outreach. I think people don't generally expect that from a jail. They certainly don't expect it from the court, so it's really refreshing and nice, and it makes us all better. And then the sheriff might mention it, but the sheriff, the Commonwealth's office, and my office are jointly sponsoring a expungement fair in the city of Manassas at the Volunteer Squad. We're also joined by Delegate Maldonado. It's Saturday, August 20th at 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock. And the purpose of the fair is to allow people Saturday access to these services. We also have volunteer attorneys who can advise them as to what is available to be expunged and how we can go about doing it. It's a one-stop shop. At the end of the line, the sheriff's office will fingerprint everybody, and then they go into the process, so they don't have to take a trip to the courthouse, and they can do it on a Saturday. So I'd encourage you to let people know. All the information you need, I know, is on my Facebook or my office's Facebook page, the Circuit Court Clerk's Facebook page, and I'm sure it's on the sheriff's website and the Commonwealth's website. But I'd like you to get the word out if you could.
Thank you. Ms. Lennox.
A couple of additional sort of processes that are ongoing, just to bring everybody into the loop on that. EBDM has made so many things possible for us, just as a county, in terms of cooperation with all of us in the criminal justice system. So the Center for Effective Public Policy is, there's a group working on a new public safety assessment tool to replace the DPRE. Several members here are deeply engaged in that process right now. It's going to be a statewide project, and there are 3 counties in the state that are participating. We're one of the pilots. Again, clearly the reason why this is effective for us is because EBDM has been so effective. And then there's also, coming from Judge Rollins, a real push to get a mental health diversion docket in Prince William County that will really start at the inception of contact with law enforcement. So we're very excited about that, in conjunction with the Crisis Receiving Center, which is getting off the ground. So as usual, Prince William County is moving forward in really amazing ways, and a lot of it originated out of this. So I just wanted everybody to give themselves a pat on the back for being able to drive this forward, and a lot of changes coming out of Prince William County and leading the rest of the state as we go.
All right, thank you. Chief Newsom.
I don't have anything, sir. Thank you.
All right, good. The only comment I have is I just want to recognize Captain DePoy. I think today is 35 years at the jail. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Next meeting will be football season.
All right.
It lasted like 35 minutes. This time it's over at
And we
40.
talked.
Yeah, we discussed a lot.